Hello and welcome to Inspiring Interviews, Conversations about Breath, where I speak to a well-known breathwork facilitator to find out about their journey and what brought them to being a breathwork facilitator. My name's Benedict and I'm the founder of Breathing Space School of Breathwork. And today I am very excited to be joined by Pete Warnock, the founder of Naturally Ecstatic Breathwork. Lovely to have you here, Pete.
Hello there. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
So a little bit of an introduction about Pete. Now, before I invite people, or when I invite people on to do these interviews, I ask them to fill in a little bit of biographical detail about what they think is important about them. And this is what Pete wrote for me. Hi, I'm Pete. I'm the creator of Naturally Ecstatic, founder of Naturally Ecstatic Breathwork and Synergy Bodywork. Pete's been healing and teaching and facilitating in the field of personal transformation and awakening since 1992. He's an energy alchemist and he's distilled his life experience of therapy, training and self-practice into what he sees to be some of the most powerful tools and techniques for healing, transformation and awakening. He's discovered this through his own journey of living and transforming his relationship with chronic pain since a series of spinal injuries as a young child. His work is his passion, and it has come about through exploring a blend of ancient wisdom, traditional and modern therapies, and cutting-edge science. So that's what you wrote about yourself, Pete. How does that sound to hear that echoed back at you?
I've never actually heard it echo back before. It's really strange, and it feels really good. Yeah, it feels great. Yeah.
Good. Okay, well, I'm going to give you another opportunity to talk about yourself now for a minute. I would like to hear some details about yourself, some biographical details, and it could be stuff like your name, your age, where you live, what your favorite meal is, any silly detail that comes into your head. Ready? You've got a minute. Go.
Okay, so my name is Pete Warnock. I'm 52 years old. I live in Pilton near Glastonbury, and I really am fascinated with peak performance, peak living. I really love living as a high vibrational being, and I do everything I can in my power to get my energy as highly vibrational as possible. So I love messing around with all sorts of different biohacking things, from food to energy to breath. I mean, I sprout, I juice, I cleanse, I do all sorts of things like that in order to, become as conscious and as high vibrational as I possibly can. And that's my life, and I share that with people. I'm so passionate about that for myself, and then I know it works for me, and I just want to share it with the world. So
amazing. I think that was 55 seconds, Pete, and that was a good little soapbox moment there.
Right.
So I do these interviews because I've been inspired by breathwork. And, it has changed my life. Just like for you, it has become not just my passion, but my profession as well. And so these interviews are to inspire around breathwork. And I find that the best way to do this is to hear people's life stories about their journey into breathwork. It's almost their testimony. So if that's okay, we're going to talk about your life.
Great.
Okay, well, let's start with inspiring. We've just heard about what inspires you right now, really very eloquently you put, but when we are young, when we are really impressionable and we're just starting out in the world, that's when we can get really inspired by things. So I'd like to ask you about little Pete, if that's all right. Let's go back to the beginning of the journey and let's find out about what inspired little Pete. Tell us about that.
Well, little Pete was into absolutely everything. Little Pete was inspired by nature. He was inspired by quietness. He would climb trees. He would go on adventures. He had lots and lots and lots of accidents and injuries. Most of the time he bounced back and was happy whistling and singing. Little Pete was deeply inspired by music as well. but I would spend lots of time high up in treetops. I'd climb and climb until I could get no higher, and then just kind of dissolve into nature and space out. And Mum would always talk about being in peatland, me being in peatland, or cloud cuckoo land, as she often said. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, what a lovely little boy. Climbing trees, being in nature, and being inspired by music. So maybe could you paint a picture of your life back then? Where were you? Who were the important people for you? You've mentioned your mum already. So tell us about your life when you were little.
Okay, so I lived in Suffolk, in the southeast of England. My dad was a school teacher, and my mum was a secretary, and I have and had. I'm the middle one of three boys, so there was a year in between each of us. So we were kind of we were super close, and we did everything together. You know, in our early years. And Mum used to make us incredible costumes and all sorts of things. So we'd all have our Tarzan costume, loincloths or whatever it was, or Topsy and Tim costumes that Mum would embroider and kind of make. And we'd go out into the garden and play silly games and kind of and beat each other up occasionally. So that's, yeah. That, and we were all really super happy. Yeah, really happy.
That sounds like almost like an idyllic kind of childhood, you know, loving and a loving mother who really obviously cared deeply about you, and two brothers really close to you who you would play out in the garden. That sounds like, almost like an idyllic childhood that many people might, you know, wish that they had.
Yeah, I mean, I had a really good start. You know, I was dealt some really good cards. You know, and being so close to my brothers was really interesting, because we wouldn't consciously explore emotions, but basically because we were all so close and within the games, we would get rough and tumble and so we would go into all sorts of emotional states, and sometimes we'd just laugh a lot together, sometimes we'd wind each other up, and sometimes we'd choose to wind one person up, and sometimes I'd be the one who'd be sat on and tickled and all sorts of things. But it was when I look back, it was actually a really cathartic time, you know, and we were actually, it was like we were kind of doing psychodrama kind of stuff, but without knowing what we were doing at the time, you know. So yeah, it was amazing.
And just maybe briefly tell us about your mum, who sounds like a really pivotal point in your, you know, part of your family, and maybe your father as well.
Yeah, I mean, Dad was there less because he was teaching a lot of the time, and he was always quite quiet and introspective. Although he was very he was always renovating things, doing things up, building things. So all of the houses that we lived in sort of three houses through my growing up, to sort of leaving home, and all of the time he would be renovating the houses. We'd buy a shell and kind of do it up and so on and so forth. So I learned a lot of my skills in kind of creating and building and all sorts of things like that, and being really super practical from my dad.
What did he teach?
And sorry?
What did he teach?
But he teach biology.
Oh.
Yeah, and in fact, he was my biology teacher, and he taught sex education when I wasn't there, when I was off sick. You know, that was one thing that wasn't really talked about. It was giggled about at home, but it was never talked about, sex education. There was a definite sort of very English, very uncomfortableness about sexuality there, you know. So, which we will come on to later on in my journey. So, and then Mum was musical. Mum was singing all the time. Mum was learning the violin. Yeah, I mean, she was very musical. She was singing in all sorts of different groups and things, choral groups and stuff. And I got very inspired. I had a next door neighbour who was sort of 90 years old and who taught me the violin from the age of 5 years old. And he was a real inspiration. You know, he was incredible. So, I mean, he was a meditator. He was into spirituality. He was a spiritualist, and he used to talk to his dead wife every day. You know, so so I kind of grew up with knowing that there was something else happening outside of everyday normal life.
Mm. Okay. can you remember his name?
Yeah, Colin Beckett. Yeah.
Colin Beckett. Okay. And maybe just your two brothers as well, because they, it would be wrong to not like bring them in a little bit. So just tell us a little bit about them.
Richie, big brother, is a year older than me. God, he's an artist. He's just incredible with anything creativity. He's super creative, and he takes after my mum. Mum used to do portraits and stuff, and my brother could paint and draw anything at all. And my little brother, at that time, God, he was just into playing. We were all just into playing and stuff. He had a bit more of a temper than the rest of us, so we used to kind of like to wind him up and watch the time bomb go off and then run away. But I mean, now he's a fireman. He's always been into really, really, really helping people. So yeah.
Okay. Well, this just makes my heart really filled with love, just imagining you three boys in your rough and tumble world, climbing trees, dressing up, and your musical mother and your dad making a home for you, and Colin next door introducing you to, music and a non-material kind of world of something different. So what a beautiful, beautiful start. And can we just savor that, all of that, with a breath together?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. That's just made my heart sing this morning. Now, but there's something that happened, isn't there, Pete, that you mentioned on your biography about an accident that you had. Maybe you can talk us through that period in your life or those events.
Well, there were 3 or 4 things that all happened within a month of each other, which which changed the way that I perceived everything. The first thing was I was circumcised at the age of 5, and I found that incredibly. I started questioning whether I was born wrong. I started questioning all sorts of things. I thought I'd been born broken and misfigured and kind of all sorts of things like that. So that was the first time I ever had any question or doubt about myself. And that at the same time, I'd started in a new school. I'd started school, and the teacher, I was left-handed, and the teacher would not allow me to be left-handed, and would smack me with a ruler on my left hand until I learned to read, or until I learned to write with my right hand. I mean, that took several months, but and so I kind of switched from being left-handed to right-handed, which shut me down. Not only shut me down in my creativity, it kind of scrambled my brain a little bit, but also I went further into this. I've been born wrong. So that started off this journey with being born wrong. And then I started having accidents. I had a couple of really, really nasty accidents. One, we lived next door to a recreation ground that had some huge trees in. One of them had a really big, long rope swing on it, and we would carry the rope swing, climb up the tree, and swing out and down. I swung down, and as I was swinging down, I slid further down than I normally do on the swing. And my knees hit the floor as I went down, and I kind of flipped. I nearly broke my back, basically. So the momentum of me going forwards, but my knees staying where they were, kind of bent me backwards, and I passed out, and that was I was picked up and taken in to my home. I was checked over, and it was seen there was nothing wrong with me. Because they couldn't see that anything was broken. but I then started having to have osteopathy weekly and all sorts of things because I had a lot of chronic pain. And once I'd got back up into the trees again, which was only a couple of weeks, we had one really tall tree that I used to like to climb up, and I remember being up the tree, and when I used to climb down, I used to slide. I'd have my hands around the tree and just slide down the trunk of the tree. And I remember as I was sliding down, I got a sliver and took one of my hands off because I got this spike in there. And with my hand coming off, I literally just sped up and slid all the way down. And there were some branches just off the bottom, and a branch went right up through my perineum, up into my stomach, or up into me anyway. And I couldn't breathe. Basically, I was in so much pain. It was just unsafe to even be conscious. I couldn't breathe. Any pressure with my diaphragm, any pressure of breath coming in was so painful. So I just stopped breathing, and just kind of wished I would disappear, and passed out. And again, I woke up. Someone had picked me up and taken me in, and Mum patched me up again, and all sorts of things like that. And it was seen there was very little actual harm, but on an emotional level, I'd shut down to a degree. Trauma had come into my body, and so I had a relationship with fear that I'd never had before.
So this is real physical trauma, and you're sort of 5, 6, did you say, at this kind of time?
Yeah, 5. Yeah, all in my 5th year. Yeah.
And that's when you established a relationship with fear and pain.
Fear and pain, yeah. Fear, pain, trauma, yeah. They all came in there. So, and I guess sexuality to a degree because of being circumcised. Suddenly questioning that my body was wrong, and a part of my body that was I suddenly became ashamed of. I'd never been ashamed. I'd run around naked, as up until then, and then and then my brothers would take the mick out of me for being circumcised. And we all, as kids, took the mick out of each other for all sorts of things. Kids can be really cruel. They don't mean to be. They don't mean to hurt anybody, but it's just what they do. So and so that started a journey for me, which is incredible. It has been such an incredible unfolding in my life.
Okay, well, let's follow that thread then. So tell us about, at a later stage when you kind of maybe into your teenage years, tell us what life was like for you then, and how this relationship with fear and pain and sexuality was manifesting when you were, not quite an adult, but not quite a child.
Okay, well, I was sexually very shut down, very repressed, very, very frightened. I had a lot of energy. I mean, I had a huge amount of energy, but I also had a huge amount of fear, and that was a lot of fear of being judged by other people, and so I created quite a larger than life persona, and with lots of bravado and kind of lots of cool factor, when actually inside I didn't feel any of that at all. I felt quite lost and quite small, but that showing that didn't serve me in those times,
Yeah.
So I mean, just to backtrack a little bit, to when I was young, or to when I was small, I used to spend a long time in the bath, and it was the only time I could ever get any peace from my brothers, because we were so close. We would do everything together. But then when I had a bath, I learned to do breathing exercises so I could hold my breath for a long time under the water, so I could just dissolve and be away from everything. So that's actually where my breath work kind of started.
Well, that's actually one of the questions I sometimes ask. Can you remember your first real experience of breath? And it sounds like that was it during the bath.
Yeah, I mean, I started experiencing, I started playing with breathing exercises around 5 or 6, and I could make myself see stars. I could do it so I could hold my breath. I could really turn on all sorts of energy, and yeah, really go into all sorts of states at a very young age. And I didn't know what I was doing, but it seemed really fun and really cool, so I just did it, you know.
And with
And
Colin
I'm
next
still
door,
doing that.
yeah, exactly. And maybe with Colin next door introducing you to other kind of things outside your normal world.
Mm.
Okay. Well, tell us a little bit more about your journey then, from maybe a teenager into a young adult. What happened in your life then?
Well, I mean, I left school at 16. It was discovered. It was discovered just before my O levels that I was dyslexic, and so they gave me extra time for my O levels. I failed all of my mocks, and then um, when it came to O levels, I was offered an apprenticeship just before doing my O levels, and so I didn't have any stress or pressure on me getting any results at all. So I went in there, didn't care, and passed everything. And which actually upset a couple of my teachers. Like they were certain that I was going to fail because I was the bad. I mean, I used to zone out a lot in school, you know. But because I was dyslexic and it wasn't picked up, I wasn't learning in a way that was traditional, and they hadn't picked up on that. So I just didn't quite get in the way in which they taught. So I got an apprenticeship. I became a scientific glass blower, which is very much about regulating breath and all sorts of things like that. So I used to make scientific instruments out of glass and did that for 7 years. Absolutely loved that. Thought that it was my life's work, and was then made redundant. It was a very small firm, and within making redundant, that was around the recession time in the UK, sort of 91, 92, 92. And yeah, it was, within losing my my job, I lost my house. I had to move back to my parents, and I ended up having a nervous breakdown, or as I see it now, a nervous breakthrough. Suddenly all of the structures that I was living by, none of them became important anymore, and I just kind of had a bit of a meltdown, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to go back into learning anything else because I was quite paranoid about my dyslexia.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd try and do something with my hands, and a friend put me on to transcendental meditation and reflexology. And so I started having reflexology and started doing TM and meditation. And within, I don't know, 5 or 6 weeks of doing TM, I had started experiencing all sorts of weird phenomena. I would sit on my bed and meditate, and I'd get this kind of wave happening through my body, and it was like my whole body would rock. And the more it would rock, I was sitting in half lotus, and the more I'd rock, it would start to turn into a very gentle bounce, and I would notice that I'd actually start floating a little bit off the ground or off the bed. And I went to see one of the teachers at the TM Institute, and said, this thing's happening to me. I'm doing this meditation, I'm doing my mantra, and this energy's happening. What do I do? And they just, stop doing it. Don't do it like that. Just sit there quietly and do your mantra. I'm just like, but this is happening. They said, no, that's the advanced course. That's the yogic flying. You shouldn't be doing that. I'm just like, yeah, but it's happening. And they basically were just like, well, you shouldn't be. And so I kind of left the TM movement at that point and just thought, I'm just going to do what works for me, rather than actually be told what I should and shouldn't be doing.
Okay, there's some big events happening there. I just want to acknowledge that. So you must have been in your early mid-20s when you got made redundant from the glass factory.
Yep.
23, 24, something like that.
23. Yeah, 23.
And that had a huge impact on you, physically and emotionally, and just having to move back in with your parents. So let's just, with that experience, you won't be the only person who there'll be lots of people who watch this interview who will know what that breakthrough experience is like. Can you just maybe talk around that, what that actually was like, what it felt like?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there were some interesting things happening in the last year of me being a glass blower there. I started having these really strange experiences happening to me. It would be like something would move up through my body, and something that I know as energy now. But it was also like it was like I was looking through my eyes, and I was someone completely different. It was like someone else was coming in and seeing out of my eyes, and they could see everything was the same, but everything felt completely differently. And so I started having these experiences, and then was made redundant. And then these experiences just got much, much stronger. And and basically I went into a place where I was trying to work out what it was, and my mind just couldn't understand it at all. And I would have days of really, really deep depression, and I would have days where I was quite suicidal, because of being in pain for all of my life. And I was never one to take painkillers. I was never really one to go in for medications or anything like that. But then when I had this this nervous breakdown, the doctor put me on antidepressants, and I felt a real shift in myself, and I completely lost myself, I would say. I numbed into a place that was really uncomfortably numb, you know.
Yeah.
It was horrible. And so I looked for ways of coming off the medication, and found TM, and within doing TM and following my breath and following my mantra, that started to lift me out and started to change my perception of everything. And yeah.
And I'll come on to the TM section in a second. In a second, but I just want to talk about your chronic pain that you had as as a teenager and as a young adult, and your relationship with that. And tell us a little bit about that, and how. And it sounds like that was still preferable to the numbness of when you were on antidepressants after you'd moved back home.
Yeah, I mean, after that first injury when I was 5, I started having, I became incredibly clumsy. And I think that was through being switched from left to right-handed, from what I can work out. I started becoming incredibly clumsy, and I had lots and lots of injuries. And a lot of them were with spinal or around the muscles of my back. And I learned that by sitting with the pain and actually really meeting the pain, without the idea of it being pain, but becoming interested in the quality of sensation that it was, would give me, for the time that I was doing that, would give me respite from it. And so I've continued throughout my life exploring different ways of meeting sensation. And very rarely do I call my pain anymore. It's more I'm experiencing strong sensation in places, and yeah, I just couldn't stand. I mean, I didn't want to take painkillers, because when I was young, I took painkillers at first, and then I would generally, when the painkillers had worn off, I'd be worse, because I'd moved myself in ways that I wouldn't normally have moved, or I'd kind of pushed myself beyond my limits, you know. So I preferred to do it without any medication. So, yeah.
Okay, so then you discovered TM, which was obviously having a very profound effect on you, a very transformative effect on you. But then that experience of being told that you were doing it wrong, that there was something wrong with you, that you weren't doing it right. So really conflicting messages from this powerful personal practice, and then teachers telling you you're wrong again, which again seems to have had an effect on you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this time it was more, I didn't find it, close me down. I had my practice, and I didn't feel that I was wrong in doing it. I actually felt that they were caught up in some dogmatic something that people have to do things in a certain way, and actually that's not how it's happening for me. And so I managed to kind of just not let that affect me personally and just continue with my practice. Which was great. And then my practice turned into something completely different. Life showed me to change what I was doing, from and drop my mantra and start following my breath, rather than following my mantra.
Okay. All right. Well, I can already see so there's some strength in your emergence, really, as not just a follower, but as almost stepping into your own authority and power then at that young age, with taking charge of your own self and not relying on others there. So tell us the next stage of your story. Where did that go when you discovered TM?
Okay. Well, there was something else that had happened just before that as well, or that was happening, but from the age of 16 through till 23, was such a shutdown sexually, and such a fear of intimacy and sexuality. Even though there was a really strong desire for it, there was part of me that had taken on all sorts of beliefs about myself and so on, and I think had taken on some of the lineage from my father, who an incredible man, incredibly beautiful man, and yet very, I would say, shut down in certain levels. And his lineage was very, very English, which was very, very shut down sexually, and emotionally, actually. So then went on this huge journey of kind of being a very, very messy kind of, and very, very fearful sexual being. And so kind of, and kind of traumatizing myself with my own thoughts and beliefs, actually, I would say, because nothing actually traumatic really happened to me, but I traumatized myself through my thoughts, for sure. And then met someone. So when I was made redundant, and then went through this whole process, once I'd come out of that, I met a woman who became my wife, and suddenly all this healing started happening, through intimate contact and through spirituality, exploring different spiritual practices. I trained in Reiki. I started working as a massage therapist because someone said that, so what do you want to do with your life? And I was just like, I have no idea. I've got hands. I'm really, really good with my hands. And they said, well, why don't you do massage or reflexology or something? So I went on a few little workshops and found that when I put my hands on someone, magic happened. Something else took over. I completely, my logical mind turned off, and I just found myself doing things that were just so incredibly beautiful, and people were having incredible responses to that. So I trained in massage, trained in Reiki, and my life started to really open up and expand, and I started teaching Reiki. I taught Reiki for several years, and again, Reiki has an element of breath work in it, or massage. If you're not coaching people's breathing in that, then it can be, or when you are coaching people's breathing in that, then it makes it all the more powerful. So all of the work I've ever done has kind of, I've learned through coaching my own breath and then coaching my clients' breath to go into deeper states. And life just kept informing me. I've been very blessed that life just keeps informing me.
So you started your healing journey in your 20s, from your chronic pain after this, which is quite early for many people. Some people don't discover it until their 30s or 40s. and you went through massage and Reiki. Yeah, so tell us more about your healing journey and when you set up Naturally Ecstatic, and let the story of your healing and your offering out to the world unfold for us.
Okay, well, I mean, certainly around that time, I started exploring. Sacred, what I call sacred sexuality. So there was part of me that knew that sex had a spiritual aspect, you know, and I've always been incredibly heart led, and within my relationship with my now ex-wife. We went on a journey of exploration, you know, and merging sex and spirit. And so I mean, it's very tantric. It's what people perceive as tantra, you know. And then looking back, I kind of realized that actually I've always had that kind of a tantric perception on life. I've always moved through life in a very tantric way. So I set up a company called Healing Connections then, and started teaching Reiki. I had several people. We used to go and do the Mind, Body, Spirit exhibitions and all sorts of things like that in the UK, and used to do talks there and do all sorts of things. Had probably a couple of thousand students within Reiki up until about 96, 97. And then the business kind of got too big for me to run, but not big enough to employ someone else. And it kind of just got a bit too much for me. And even though I was doing my meditation, I was doing my practice and my breathing stuff, I found that my dyslexia creates quite a lot of chaos. So when it comes to being ordered and running a business, I'm not the person to be doing that at all, you know. So I'm fantastic with people. I'm fantastic with delivering information, and actually less so delivering information, more so sharing what can unfold and taking people on a journey with that. But then the whole business side of it kind of got on top of me, and so I closed the business down and actually went bankrupt. Because I couldn't do that side of things, and couldn't afford to pay someone else. So I kind of had another little kind of step back and reset. And within the reset, I started doing a lot more practice. And my relationship at the time broke down, all sorts of things. And so I moved in. I moved back. There was a granny flat at my parents', and I moved in there and just started doing tons of my own practice, and really, really questioning which bits of what I teach really work for me. Because within the whole thing of Reiki that I was teaching and massage I was teaching, there were tons of things that I was sharing and teaching that I'd been taught, but I didn't necessarily 100% resonate with. Yeah. And so I really put everything under a microscope and really looked at what is true for me, you know, what is real, what actually works in this body here, you know, and then decided that once I discovered that, this is what I'm going to share, you know, because this is the truth of what I know. This is what I feel in my body. This is real for me. And then, yeah, I just started teaching that.
Well, that's really interesting, because you were granted, you know, your initial kind of exploration of massage and Reiki, and then you have another point of reflection of like kind of going inside and learning what it is that you really want to do. So you have your first explorations of it, and then you get to distill, which I think is a word that you used in your biography of where you go to next. And what did emerge, Pete? Well,
I mean, up until that point, I had done so many bloody training courses. Oh my God, you know, I'd done shamanic this and that, and tantric this and that, and goodness knows what, and channeling courses, and goodness, and there was just so much kind of in here, but so much in here. And so in me taking time and not teaching and just doing the work myself, so a clarity started coming in me, and I discovered practices that really worked for me, and that some practices did a certain thing and other practices did a certain thing, and one day I would want to do this and one day I'd want to do that, and then it became very clear that the tantric energy was the path that I really needed to follow, and share a path of deep heart connection, and connecting our sexual body and our sexual energy with our heart, and the form that took was a new relationship, where I explored that with the mother of my son, who is now 16, son, not the mother of the son, and then sorry, and then and doing training in tantric bodywork and doing more tantric bodywork. I mean, ever since I first did my first massage course, and we were taught on a holistic massage course that you can massage. I mean, holistic means the whole mind, body and soul, and yet you're not allowed to massage this bit or kind of this. There's so much that you're not allowed to massage or touch there because of all sorts of different reasons. And very early on in my system, and in my awareness, was just like, these are the parts that people hold their trauma. These are the parts that people are really needing to be connected with love in order to transform. And so I started exploring and practicing tantric bodywork. Within exploring tantric bodywork and sexual healing, again, this uses a lot of breath. You know, it uses breath, awareness, expanded consciousness, and bringing oneself back into the innocence of being, and that includes our sexual body. You know, because our sexual body is just there. You know, it's just a natural expression of this life and it's this body. But I had realised that I'd created so much conditioning around it. You know, and so my relationship that I was in then and the previous relationship were about me sort of de-armoring my sexual body and really opening myself up to innocence once again, you know, and reconnecting my kind of primal sexual energy with my heart. And when they connected, the polarity changes so much. You know, it's such a massive transformation.
That sounds really powerful, Pete. That you know, the real meaning of holistic, you know, the real acceptance of our bodies and the energy in there, and how you started to bring that in, is really powerful. And breath as well. So when did breath start to become a part of what you do distinctly, rather than just an adjunct to body work or to meditation or to tantra or something? When were you aware of breath as a sort of discipline or a practice, separate from everything else? And when was your move into that?
Well, I mean, there were little pockets of it throughout my life. Sure. You know, and I guess I started doing. I mean, I've been a therapist now for 28 years or something like that, and even early on, sometimes they would just be breathwork sessions. You know, even early on, sort of 26, 27 years ago. Sometimes people just needed to either be touched or not even touched and just breathe. You know, and in that point, I didn't know so much about breathing, and I didn't even know that there was training on learning to breathe. You know, I mean, wow. And then I did I traveled quite a lot as well, in Thailand, India and stuff, and went on all sorts of different workshops, and breath work. I did some, the first stuff I did was called Vivation, which is very similar to rebirthing. you know, open mouth breathing. Yeah, so I mean, I'm not even sure when that was. That was probably 94, something like that. And yeah, and so I would do some breathwork sessions, you know, here and there. I suppose 15 years ago, I really started getting into much more breath. A lot of my workshops became purely breath led. And then I'd done quite a lot of small breathwork courses in my travels around. And when I got together with my partner, who I've been with for 12 years now, Kalindi, we did a course probably 11 years ago, a rebirthing course with Andy Portman. And he's, I mean, beautiful guy, Taoist rebirther, runs a permaculture centre in Somerset. And so we did a year's breathwork training with him, and within that, I was starting to do more and more pure breathwork sessions. And obviously, because of the training, we had to do a huge amount of breathwork sessions with ourselves and with participants on the course, and then with clients and so on and so forth. So yeah, that changed. I mean, it changed my perception. I mean, I think every course I've been on has changed my perception on yeah, and whether it's breath work or not. I personally see everything as such an interweave, you know, absolutely everything. And when I teach breath, whether it be on a one-to-one or on a group basis, I don't just teach breath. I'm not just guiding breath. I'm guiding awareness. I'm guiding energy. I'm dropping into myself. So there is transmission happening. Yeah? It's kind of, yeah, it's not one or the other.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay. And so what is it that you do now with breath? Maybe you could just talk us through Naturally Ecstatic and what it is that you try and do with breathwork and your breathwork clients or group sessions that you do now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have quite a wide range of breath exercises that I use depending on what people are really needing. Sometimes I teach what I call breath mechanics. It's stuff from a mixture of qigong and all sorts of different and Taoist practices and things, which really gets one looking at how the diaphragm works, the nature of the diaphragm, where we breathe from, where we breathe to, how we breathe. So there's quite a lot of my work initially is educational around what this body was designed to breathe like. One of my deepest teachings around breathwork was having a baby. I mean, obviously not me personally, but my partner, and watching little Josh breathe, you know, and breathing with Josh, and really kind of coming up. I'm very empathic, and so really tuning into him and feeling what is happening in his body and allowing my body to take that on. And so I learned a huge amount about how the diaphragm works, or how the diaphragm can work. So I have a kind of educational element to the breath work. I have a kind of consciousness expanding element to the breath work. And then there's also the therapeutic kind of breath work, like rebirthing, which they're kind of two separate things. One leads into the other, and I think that the conscious connected breath work works better when one's breathing mechanics are functioning in a better way. Yeah. But I see training that teaching people the mechanics as kind of step one, which is kind of what I'm teaching on. I'm creating an online course at the moment, and the fundamentals are the breath mechanics. Yeah. So yeah. So and I also, Naturally Ecstatic is a mixture of all sorts of things. It's a mixture of energy work, awareness work, mind focus work. It's learning how to tap into our natural pharmacy. I mean, this body is an incredible pharmacy. You know, we have access to the most incredibly ecstatic and blissful states, and we have to choose them. But we have to know that we can, and we have to know the pathways to get there. And I've learned this through meeting pain. You know, through meeting suffering. I've found this through meeting all sorts of different deep emotional places that have been very hard, and I've found a way of turning that around to actually make it work for me, because the only thing that is ever happening in us is life. Everything we feel is life appearing in us, and no matter where we are in our mind, life is happening. If we're in a story and a belief about something, then we often experience what that belief is. But if we can let go of the belief and meet the life that's here, then something else starts to happen. We start to open in a different way. And I learned this through experiencing angry people around me, and kind of, what do I do with this anger? Because it would actually make me angry, but I didn't want to throw it back at them. And so I learned to really meet the quality of sensation of the anger and find, why am I finding this really, really hard to deal with? What is going on? And then I realized that I was kind of trying to deal with it. I was trying to do something with it rather than actually meet the life in it and let go of the story. The story is only ever the messenger, you know? Once the message is here, the sensation, the life, that's yours. If it appears in your body, it's yours, you know? And so I started taking this in, letting this empower me. Wow, this feeling can empower me. And actually, I can let this feeling love me. Now, what does that mean? Oh my God. Wow. That turns anger, fear, everything around completely.
Yeah.
So my Mac is about to die. I haven't plugged it in. I'm just going to plug it in. Hang on a second.
That's fine. I can. One of the things, whilst you're doing that, one of the things you said really struck me. How we have these blissful, ecstatic states available to us, but we have to choose them. And you met them through pain, which is a remarkably powerful insight to have. Your relationship with joy and bliss and ecstasy, you discovered that through your relationship with pain, which is, you know, a beautiful thing. Okay. Well, let's go back to it.
Can I just say one thing? I learned them through not only pain, but through fear. I learned, yeah, because fear is exactly the same chemicals in the body as excitement. And I'd heard this many years ago and thought, well, whatever, I didn't really get that. And then suddenly one day I did this process of flipping it and taking it in and choosing it. And wow, you know, it just
well, interesting to say that. That's how it started off as well, with pain and fear, and also shame, or the feeling that there's something wrong with your body. They all came into your life at the same time, and it seems that they were your greatest teachers, maybe, as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I wouldn't be who I am now without them.
Well,
so I certainly wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now anyway without them. Yeah.
Well, let's move on to teachers then, because the teachers are the ones that really inspire us. And we've already met. Was it your next door neighbour, Charles?
Yeah, Colin.
But tell us about who the most inspirational teachers in your life. Who have they been? How did they inspire you? What did they teach you?
Okay. One of my most inspiring teachers was a best friend of mine who passed on probably 12, 13 years ago. She, Claire Fraser, her name. She was a nurse. She was 4 years older than me. I was completely in love with her. Had a massive crush on her for all of the time I ever knew her, and she never knew. Yeah, she was a real inspiration. It was because of her that I got into that I got into TM, and she lived at Findhorn. She was kind of my friend who was always trying the next alternative something, and yeah, she just used to drip feed me all sorts of incredible stuff, you know, and yeah, it was because of her that I came to a lot of this way of thinking.
So Claire Fraser.
Yeah, Claire Fraser. Obviously, Colin with the music. I mean, Colin was a violinist. He was a concert violinist, but he was really into jazz. He was really into playing violin like Stefan Grappelli. And Stefan Grappelli was, when I was young, and in fact even now, you know, wow, if I could play the violin like Stefan Grappelli, you know. But I in going to a music school, I got a music scholarship when I was 11 or 12 to going into the next school, and but it was a school that only classical music is allowed, you know. So I dropped music, you know. It's just like I got a music scholarship and dropped music. So who else? I mean, I've sat with a lot of teachers in my time. I've had some really inspirational bodywork teachers. I remember doing a course with a guy called Michael Sidamo Johnson, in Copenhagen, and we did a week-long Ayurvedic yoga massage course, and he was just like full power and really high vibrational, really lovely. In fact, that whole time I was doing a lot of stuff with a guy called Ryan, who was teaching a lot of breath work at the time, and it was his own kind of brew. And a lot of the breath mechanics that I explore and teach now has come from Ryan's work. I sat with a guy called Bernie Pryor. I did a lot of energy work and satsang work with he's a kind of enlightened teacher. And actually, I sat with a lot of enlightened people, like, oh, crikey, what was his name? Muji. I sat with Muji, and I sat with Shakti Ma and all sorts of people. I was very on an enlightenment kind of journey for many years in my life.
Yeah, you've had some great teachers, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, I was very into Barry Long once, and yeah, I've learned a lot. And actually, it's funny. I've learned a lot about how not to do things as well. You know, when you do a lot of go to a lot of trainings and a lot of courses, you kind of sift out the things that really you don't want to do, as well as the things that completely inspire you. So, and at the moment, my most inspiring teacher is Jan Day. Jan Day teaches Tantra, and her way is just absolutely spectacularly beautiful, and such a slow unfolding of naturalness and innocence.
Okay, well, maybe in the comments when this video is posted, you could write some of them down. But I just want to draw a distinction here between, you know, the teachers who you learned stuff from and the teachers who have kind of really inspired you. And the first person that you mentioned was Claire, and your relationship with her, and that was, you know, and how she was an influence in you over a period of time, drip feeding you stuff. So can we just take a breath with her to really honor and acknowledge her? And I know she's passed, but I'd still like to just bring her in, if that's okay.
Lovely, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, let's have a breath for Claire.
Yeah, she was quite incredible, and she was very ill for quite a long time, and she was misdiagnosed, so she didn't actually need to die at all. You know, it was such a terrible thing, really. She was diagnosed with chronic asthma, and she was medicated for many years, and it turned out she had a heart condition. And by the time they found that she had a heart condition, it was too late. She was put on a donor list, or on a transplant list, and she died before a heart came. So she died in her way too early. So
I'm glad
she was actually godmother to my son. So
Well, thank you for bringing her in today. And it's one of the things I love is being able to just acknowledge those big people in our lives, and I get to feel them a little bit as well. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, we're coming up to the end of our hour now. So I've got a couple of things I'd like to do with you first.
Yeah.
I'd like maybe if you could lead us in a breath exercise in a little bit, just for a minute or two to finish off with. But first, we've talked about all the people who have inspired you, you know, from your early years through your teachers and through the learnings, even some of the less material things like your relationship with pain and fear and how those have been your teachers. But what would you like to inspire in others, Pete?
Okay. I would like to inspire fascination in people.
Fascination.
When we allow ourselves to become fascinated, when we choose to become fascinated in things, then we open up our field of perception. And when we bring a real heart interest into something, you know, we become super present with it. And then when we're super present with it, then if we allow ourselves to completely open up to receive it, then miracles can happen. Absolute miracles can happen.
Miracles can happen when we're fascinated and we open up and we receive. Then miracles can happen. That's a beautiful phrase.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you for what a beautiful journey. So much richness and learning in there. Thank you for this hour, Pete. It's lovely to hear. And for anyone who suffers from chronic pain, if they're young or wherever they are in their journey, that these can be our greatest teachers as well, and to lead us places where we would never have gone before is a very powerful lesson and a very inspiring story to hear, Pete. So, you know, for me and on behalf of the people who watch this, I just want to really thank you for opening up and telling us about your journey.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, just very briefly, the last 12 years have been such an incredible time of learning as well. In the time that I've been with my partner now, and we teach together, we share together, we explore all of our practices, and whether it be tantra, whether it be breath work, whether it be all sorts of things, and that has been, it's been like rocket fuel to my life, you know, in as much as opening and such a deepening. So I just feel so blessed, and I just have to honor Kalindi in this time, you know.
Sure, let's have a breath with her as well. And you know, we learn more about ourselves in relationship with others than we do by ourselves. That's where we really. Oh, you're right. It's like rocket fuel. So let's just have a breath with her as well.
Yeah. Wonderful.
So have you got a little breath that you could lead us in?
Yeah, it's very simple. It's a very simple breath, and it's a very slow exhalation, but it's with sound and vibration. So just closing the eyes a minute, putting your awareness in your body, and you're just going to take a breath in, and then you're just going to hum very gently, very softly, very quietly to yourself. And the invitation is to make your hum as soft as you can possibly make it. So soft. And really meet it with a gentle expansion through your body. And hum until there's no breath left in the body. And let the breath come back in. And then hum your breath out again. As slowly, as softly. And really let yourself enjoy it. Really let yourself savor the quality of sensation, which is the quality of life. The only thing that is happening is life. If you feel it, it is just for you. So receive it, open to it, enjoy it. It is a choice. So one more breath in And a soft, gentle hum. And that's, you're going to do one more breath, but we're going to allow your hum to become silent. So you're still allowing the breath to escape really slowly, but it's a silent hum. Just feeling in your body, dropping in your body, relaxing through your body. And then just noticing how you are.
Much calmer, much stiller, much more present. Present with myself. Do you have a name for this breath?
I call it, I call it your succulent hum.
Sucking your thumb breath.
Succulent hum.
Or succulent hum.
Yeah, not sucking your thumb. Yeah, your succulent hum. I mean, actually, it's a practice that comes out of Kashmiri Shaivism, and it's part of a longer process, part of a longer meditation. And I've got that meditation on my Anchor FM if people want to practice it. That's up there for free. So.
Sure. Okay. Well, that was a really beautiful little breathwork technique, and I can imagine doing that for longer would only increase the effects of it.
I use this. I was teaching. I teach singing as well. I'm very into a cappella and vocal harmony and all sorts of things. And I had to go into and teach some doctors some things about what helps with mental health and teaching them about singing. And the first thing I did was this hum, just for 4 minutes. And afterwards, the doctors were just like, all of my patients need this. This is the most incredible thing. You can reset yourself in 3 or 4 minutes. I mean, why doesn't the world know about this?
I asked myself that question. Why isn't everyone breathing more?
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Pete, again for your presence and your story again today. It's beautiful to hear.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been really lovely to share. Thank you.
Should we finish with a breath together?
Let's do that for sure.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you, everyone.